So here in the cool of the evening, mid-November, I want to show you something that we've been growing for quite a while, and that's carrots. And from the first time we started this farm or this market garden, carrots were one of the things that we wanted to be a staple and something that we grew every single year. And we've learned a few things about planting them and also making sure that they thrive and do well and look like very presentable carrots that our customers would want to purchase. So I always like to pass along some of those things that we do that can be successful for you. So I'm going to go inside. This is our East High Tunnel, and we're just going to pop inside and I'm going to show you something real quick. As I step inside, I'll turn the camera around and you can see there's a little bit of Swiss chard right here. There's a few beets. Some of our bell peppers we still have growing right over here, and we actually have some bunch onions, which are actually doing pretty well. I planted these about a month ago, so they're starting to get almost to the stage where they're going to be nice to harvest and have for some of our customers. But what we're looking at is carrots. And I'll have another video at the end where I'll show you how we plant and what we do to make sure that the soil is prepped just right so you get a nice, long, straight carrot that's presentable and looks the way you want a carrot to look. And as I've said many times, I'll say this again, if it's your own backyard garden and you have good, healthy carrots, but maybe they hit a little bit more firm or hard soil and tended to turn or bend, carrots are still going to be good. They're just not going to be looking perfectly straight like the carrots you buy at the grocery store, but they still taste fine. So just to let you know, it's not the end of the world if your carrots don't look exactly like they do in the magazine. So you don't have to worry about that. But let me flip this around. This is a 50-foot row, 30 inches wide, and you cannot tell it by looking at this, but those are 3 separate rows of carrots, and we tried to space them out where they're not too crowded, but at the same time maximize how many that we're growing in there. And one of the things I like to always mention when growing carrots is you want to water them properly. And what I found is if I can have, especially in this warmer zone, now this time of year we've cooled off, but in this warmer zone, if I have 2 to 3 really lengthy watering cycles during my week, and we use drip lines, if you look down in here, you can actually see these drip lines. There's a couple of them running through here. And what we'll do is run those for an hour and a half, so we're getting a good penetrating watering cycle so that water gets down to the bottom of the roots, because anytime you're watering carrots, remember, as they start to germinate, as they start to grow downward, you've got to get that moisture down deep. Just like anything else, you can overwater and do damage, cutting off some of the oxygen, which plants do need. It's very important. You don't want to get these things where they're flooded and they're not getting a good oxygen so they can grow well. But at the same time, they do have to have that moisture deep. And if you're just having a little bit of moisture on the surface, you're just not going to get carrots that are going to be pushing and growing down like they should. So that's one of the keys that we've found is the proper watering. The other thing is to have them spaced, not too tightly, because you could see they really do spread out. If you look in here a little bit closer, you can see that we try to have them maybe an inch or so, but we'll drop in just in a small space. There's going to be 30 or 40 seeds. We use a earthway seeder when we plant. So a lot of little seeds are going down. If you've ever planted carrots, you know it's a tiny seed. So they're going to be fairly close together, but you just don't want it where it's too crowded. Then you have to go in and thin them out a little bit if they're overcrowded. And that's something I don't like to do. It's just wasted time, and I don't like to waste seeds. So we try to get the proper amount dropped in the soil with our little earthway seeder. Or if you're doing it by hand, you can even be more accurate and just move your hand along, and you can with practice, you can get really good at it. So one of the keys for us, and depending on the zone you live in the United States, one of the keys for carrots to really do well is timing. Now, if you live in a climate where it's cooler most of the year, you're not going to have a big trouble with carrots doing well, because in these warmer climates here in the southwest, once we get to the heat of the summer, carrots just don't do as well. As I had one of my customers say, they get soapy. And the first time I heard that term, I was like, soapy. And she was right. It kind of has this soapy taste, and they don't have a crispness to them like carrots should, and they just don't do well. But once we get back to late August, early September, we go back with our planting again, because we know we're going to start to have cooler weather. Carrots are going to thrive in that cooler weather, and you're going to get carrots tasting the way they should. So for us, it's early spring, which we could still have some late frost here in Central Texas, Texas Hill Country. And then later, when we get into now, like November, we've already had a couple of frost. Yes, we do have them inside of high tunnels, but I always say you could use the low cat tunnels where there's a covering over them outside, and in some cases, they might even be fine after a little bit of frost. I will say they can be susceptible. I'll show you one quick thing. These high tunnels can still get frost inside. There's no guarantee. This covering plastic is not insulated. There's no heater in here. Does help a little. As you can see, we're now at about 4:30 in the evening. I've already got the sides down to try to trap in as much heat as possible because it's supposed to be cold tonight. But let me go down here to the back, and if you look real closely, you can see a little bit of off coloring on these leaves. It's because about a week ago they had a light frost inside the high tunnel. So frost inside or outside, the temperature is going to be pretty much the same. These tunnels do protect from pounding rains, high winds, things like that. And they will provide a little bit of a warmer temperature. So let's go down, look at one of these carrots. Let's find one here we can pull and just see how it looks. No guarantee we'll have one that looks perfect. Some of these are actually a little bigger than this. This one's probably maybe 6 inches at best. We have several in here that are much longer, but these carrots are really good right now at this point. And many times, even with that compost and soil on it, I don't mind taking a bite. Nothing wrong with that. A little good bacteria in my gut. So, what I always like to emphasize when raising carrots, remember, you don't want to flood or overwater any of your plants. I've learned that lesson several times. Early on with our Swiss chard, I almost killed our Swiss chard the first time we started growing it, simply because I overwatered it. But the key is good, consistent watering, getting it down deep to the roots, and then you're going to have a carrot. It's going to thrive. The second thing is always pay attention to your zone. If you're somewhere in the northern part of the United States, Ohio, Indiana, you're going to have a season, excuse me, where the frost is going to be early. And so you've got to plan accordingly. And you may be able to get, I've never raised in those areas, but my thinking is you're probably going to be able to get carrots all the way through the summer just because it's a little bit more temperate and not as hot as it is here in this part of Texas. So that's the key. Good watering, good area where you're not going to have any sort of erosion or issues or problems, and make sure you're planting in a season where you've got that cooler weather and you won't end up with some carrots that have that soapy taste. So thanks again for finding our channel. We always appreciate it. We always it means a lot to us when you like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach another video right over here that shows exactly the procedures we go through when we plant, how we prep these beds to get them ready for carrots. Thanks. Blessings over you, your family, and your garden. Talk to you soon from Whirlwind Family Farm.